guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby, masturbating with magazines.
What is going on, Wisconsin sports fans? You are tuned into the podcast formerly known as Buck Life. This is a fan podcast made by hardcore Wisconsin sports fans. My name is Jacob Anderson. With me, as always, is Mr. Chuck Schilling. How you doing tonight, Chuck?
Not too bad. A little hot, humid, sweaty. Got a little swamp ass earlier in the day, but other than that, I'm doing good.
One of these days, like when we start one of these, I think, because it's always like not too bad, I just want you to throw me for a loop and be like, this is the worst fucking day of my life. Like,
well, I mean,
if doing this.
If we offer Jabari a max contract and we happen to sign that day, that might be one of those days where I'm not doing good. Yeah,
you might be testing fate actually with that one.
I hope to God not. But yeah, if that happens, I'll run over here. We can record an episode. You can ask me how I'm doing, and I'll be like, I'm fucking miserable.
Shittiest day of my life. Same. Okay, well, I mean, as I said, this is the formerly known as Buck Life Podcast. We still haven't settled on a name yet, so that's indefinitely going to be what we call ourselves. We'll still market it the same way and still kind of put it out there the same way. But as we said, we're taking suggestions for any names. So any of the listeners out there, any of our followers on Twitter, please throw some suggestions out there. We'll give you some credit, maybe get you on the show too. You briefly touched on it there, talking about Jabari Parker, but more importantly, or the bigger story is we are a few days in now to pretty much the craziest NBA offseason I can ever remember as far as free agency, player movement is concerned. And, I mean, the big one, it all starts with LeBron James going out to L.A. This one, I'm not going to lie, it shocked me. I know that there have been rumors for a year. I just didn't buy the whole LeBron just wants to be Hollywood thing. And sure enough, I mean, it's a few days into free agency. He commits 4 years. It's not his typical maybe one with a player option, two with a player option, but 4 full years, LeBron to the Lakers. Your thoughts?
It's, the rumors were always there.
Oh, for a calendar year.
But it was one of those things where you thought, okay, well, maybe if he can get a Paul George to go with him, or if they can get a Kawhi Leonard in a trade. But for him to just go there by himself with a relatively young team, I mean, yes, they got Rajon Rondo. They got a couple other pieces around him, but they're not serious contenders as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you can look that, yes, in Cleveland he took a really bad team and he fought hard against Golden State. So I guess him alone does kind of make them contenders. It's kind of like Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. They're always going to be some level of contender, but they're not a legit contender, I don't think, against Golden State. So
no.
He's going there just because he wants to be Hollywood, and that's where he wanted to play.
Yeah, and it was weird when the news broke because it was just kind of like a Sunday afternoon or early evening it broke. And the speculation before that was if Kawhi Leonard ends up on the Lakers, or if Paul George, or if both end up on the Lakers, then you're going to see LeBron sign there. Once he signed, then the speculation became, well, clearly they have something on the horizon now. They must be close to a Kawhi deal. Paul George must have, given them the wink, wink, he's coming kind of thing. And then nothing. So I think it's pretty clear LeBron probably knew this for a long time beforehand, that ultimately that's where he's going to end up. One of the things that I can't believe nobody's really talking about in this whole story is that in February, the Lakers and Cavaliers made a trade which basically made it really, really easy for LeBron to sign there. It gave the Lakers cap space, and it gave them a first-round pick from the Cavaliers. And I just find it kind of funny that nobody's like, that was kind of a snaky thing for LeBron to do, because don't get it twisted. LeBron was the GM in Cleveland. Maybe he's the GM in LA too, and Magic's just kind of, being his water boy. But very, very weird that you see that trade, and then months later, oh, lo and behold, that's where he ends up.
Yeah, and it's not really mentioned at all. It'd normally be the type of thing you don't want to delve too deep into conspiracy theories or something, but it is on the level of potential collusion to do that. I mean, it's bizarre. But back to what you were saying, it's the Lakers reached out for Kawhi, said no or whatever, and then you think, well, maybe Paul George will come there, but he basically just recommitted to Oklahoma City. He's not coming. So now you got LeBron in the West against the Harlem Globetrotters up north in the state.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna get to that.
It's kind of, hey, if that's where you want to play, go for it. Not many people get to pick their dream job in the dream city if that's what you ultimately want and you have the opportunity. You know, I I can't blame the guy. It's kind of like I kind of view that way. Paul Chris, not to get off topic here, but Madison native Badger head coach of the Badgers might be his dream job. It is what it is. Maybe playing in Los Angeles was LeBron's dream job at this point in his career.
Well, and you talk about Kawhi Leonard, him being on the outs with San Antonio, telling them he doesn't want to come back. The Lakers not as of now being able to pull off a trade for him. That's kind of a weird story in and of itself. That I can see San Antonio's point of view. You don't want to trade him to LA. They're in your conference. They're one of your rivals. But I can also just see Popovich being a stubborn motherfucker and being like, no, you know what? You quit on us. I'm going to trade you anywhere but LA just because I know that's where you want to go. And, if there's one guy in the league that would, kind of put that out there or make that his stance, I could see it being Pop because he's just got that personality.
Well, and I don't blame them. I don't think you can willfully trade a player that's a potential MVP caliber to a close division rival. I mean, there's a reason when Brett Favre wanted out of Green Bay and the Packers were ready to move to Aaron Rodgers. Not only did they trade him to the other conference, they put a stipulation in the trade that, hey, if you send him to Minnesota, we get all your first-round picks.
Yeah.
And he still ended up going there as a free agent.
Yeah.
But the Packers, under no circumstance, were going to let Brett Favre go to Minnesota while it was within their power to control the situation. And obviously there comes a point where Kawhi Leonard will be a free agent, and if he wants to go to Los Angeles and play with LeBron, so be it. San Antonio can only stop it so long. But I get where San Antonio is coming from, and the report on draft night was kind of basically the Lakers reached out and San Antonio didn't even want to hear anything to do with it, from what I could understand. And who knows, what really was said, but it kind of got the impression that they're just like, doesn't really matter what you're offering, it's not happening.
Well, and what kind of precedent would that set if players all of a sudden can go, I don't want to play for you anymore, and I only want to play for this team, so trade me there? What kind of precedent would that set if San Antonio was just like, sure thing, boss, let's get you there right away. Here's a care package on your way out.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen it before where teams, they'll have limited no-trade clauses in their contract. They can say no to a certain amount of teams or whatever it is. And you see that a lot in baseball, not as much in the NBA, but there's nothing wrong with, giving the players a little bit of control, but you can't just give them every demand. It's got to be a two-way thing here. And that's why you have the CBA where the teams get so much power, the players get so much power. And, every 5-6 years they renegotiate that. The Kawhi Leonard situation is it's bizarre. The whole thing, was he injured? Was he healthy enough to play? He's like we say, an MVP caliber player, but it's just a weird situation in San Antonio.
Well, and it seemed like he was really embracing kind of not giving a fuck about the whole situation. I remember when San Antonio was in the playoffs, during one of their playoff games, Kawhi was live streaming himself playing some video game, and that was no coincidence. That was basically him saying, fuck you, I don't care that I'm not there. And as far as the potential deal to the Lakers is concerned, the last report that I heard is that San Antonio asked LA for one of their young players. So either Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball would probably be the three guys, one of those guys, although I did hear they're not really interested in Lonzo. One of those
Lonzo
guys
does not seem like a San Antonio guy.
No, he doesn't seem like a Popovich guy.
Yeah.
At least his dad doesn't.
Yeah.
But on top of that, they wanted one of those guys on top of 3 first-round picks and 2 additional pick swaps. So basically, you're giving us all your first-round picks for the foreseeable future and one of your top young cornerstones. So San Antonio I don't see them really backing off of that, especially considering I know Pop isn't their GM, but let's be honest, he's the guy that runs the show there.
Anytime you've been a coach for that long in the same organization, you're going to have a lot of sway and basically be a de facto GM. I mean, maybe they have another official GM to work out contract details and make the phone calls and all that, but everyone knows Popovich has a ton of say where he's at,
Well, and the Lakers, they're kind of playing a dangerous game here. We talked about Paul George, him choosing to stay in Oklahoma City, which I think a lot of people were surprised by. Him just being comfortable there, really enjoying his time there. He is in the middle of, or I don't know if he's finished or wrapped it up yet, but he's making a documentary about his entire situation or his entire experience as a free agent this offseason. And they released a clip of it, a snippet where he talks about how last year at this point in time, he really, really wanted to go to the Lakers, but the Lakers didn't trade for him. So in that year span, he just became so in love with Oklahoma City and playing there with their fan base, with the ownership group, with, I'm guessing Russell Westbrook, although that seems strange to me. But he just enjoyed the experience so much that that's where he wanted to be. So maybe, the Lakers could be playing with fire here. If they think we can sit this out a year, get Kawhi next offseason when he's a free agent, well, who's to say San Antonio doesn't trade him somewhere like the Clippers, or there was talk that he wanted to go to New York, and he falls in love with that town and he re-ups there. It's a dangerous game if the Lakers are serious about winning.
Right, and it does seem the Lakers are somewhat, retooling for that future year where maybe they can get another superstar to pair with LeBron, and maybe Kawhi is ultimately going to be their target. But like you said, it's playing with fire. At some point, if you want a player of that caliber, you have to give up assets. There's
got to pay to play.
The only ways you get a superstar, you can convince one to sign in free agency, or because they just want to play in that town, like LeBron to the Lakers, or LeBron previously to Miami, and then even LeBron going back to Cleveland, he wanted to go home. You draft one, and you got to be really bad to do that. There's no way the Lakers are getting a top 5 pick with LeBron on their player. He's going to get them, to the playoffs by himself. You can put LeBron and 4 guys from the YMCA, and they're going to make the playoffs.
I mean, if he gets injured,
if he gets injured,
we're going to talk about that too. But
that is always the caveat. Any injuries change everything. But assuming LeBron is healthy for the vast majority of the year, they're making the playoffs. They're not getting a top 5 pick. Or you trade one. And if you're going to trade to get a superstar, you're going to have to give up legit assets, either young players or multiple first-round picks. So the Lakers aren't going to get a player via the draft, barring an injury to LeBron. They're not seemingly getting one in trade right now, and I think they're definitely in a position to sign one in free agency. They're still one of those teams where people want to go play there, despite they've been struggling and pretty bad for, 10 years now? It's been a while since they've been a good team. But maybe not a full 10 years, but close to it. And you don't want to be too risky. There's a value. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. It's a saying for a reason. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for LeBron and the Lakers going forward.
Well, when we talked about LeBron and the news breaking, and we assumed that there would be more moves coming for the Lakers, more names, and that happened. But I mean, I look at what they've done.
78-year-old Rajon Rondo.
You look at what they've done in the interim, and I had to wonder to myself, are they trying to tank this year? Because if you want to put a team around LeBron, besides the fact that I'm sure he's going to want to play with superstar type players. I mean, when he went back to Cleveland, it was pretty much mandated. You're trading the number 1 pick to give me Kevin Love to get the guys that I want in there. But you look at the names that they brought in. So they re-signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, an okay player. I think he averaged 13 points a game in 33 minutes or so last year.
He's a good bench player, role player, whatever role you put him in. He's not a stud.
Then you got JaVale McGee, who's, I guess the more well-known Dan Gadzuric in my eyes. He could be effective at times, but for the most part, he's just silly.
Yeah, he can dunk, he can get some boards, and that's it.
Yeah, he can be in the right place occasionally. You got Rajon Rondo, you got Lance Stevenson. I mean, to me, if you want to build a team around LeBron, they are doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing. So you're getting guys who need the ball in their hands like Rondo to be effective, and then you're getting guys who are not guys that can spread the floor. Like you're not getting great shooters. Stevenson's not a shooter. Rondo's obviously not a shooter. LeBron himself is not a great shooter. He can get streaky and get hot at times, but as of right now, you have LeBron, a bunch of kids, and these over-the-hill vets that are just terrible fits for that team. So I'm breaking it down in the Western Conference, and I'm going, are they a top 4, 5, 6 teams? You look at who's in front of them, and we're going to go more into some of the other moves, but you got Golden State, you got Houston, you got Utah, Denver's an up-and-coming team. you still have San Antonio. You don't know what they're going to do. Portland is always there with Damian Lillard and company. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing a team or two.
Portland's a weird team to me. Like, I know Damian Lillard's really good, but they always seem to outperform what I think they should on paper.
OKC, that's the big one I missed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're clearly in a better position than LA is at this moment in time. So, I mean, it would be kind of a dud if LeBron makes all this hoopla of going to the Lakers and then, they're a 6, a 7, 8 seed. Like, that would be kind of a funny way to end the season for them.
Yeah, it kind of somewhat their roster reminds me of back at the end of Karl Malone and Gary Payton when they went to the Lakers, and they were kind of chasing a ring. You had a very young
so
Kobe
you're saying
Bryant
JaVale
at the
McGee
time.
is Karl Malone-esque.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Karl Malone's a significantly better player than JaVale McGee.
Maybe. Debatable. Yeah.
I don't think that's even debatable. As you laugh over there. And Gary Payton's certainly better than Lance Stevenson. So, as much as people in Milwaukee love to hate Gary Payton, he was still a great player in his day. So it's definitely a very weird roster makeup for sure, especially in today's NBA. You really need those shooters, and I don't know, I don't know what they expect. If they expect the young guys to just come back as stud 3-point shooters, or it's weird, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, one of the things that shocked me about LeBron going to the Lakers the most is that I assumed he was either going to stay in Cleveland or go to Philadelphia because he would stay in the Eastern Conference, and I think he would, with either one of those teams, maybe not Cleveland so much, maybe they're on the downside, but I thought if he was able to get to Philadelphia, and I really thought Boston was going to be a dark horse in this and somehow find a way to get him there. I think
they
that
have
would
a
have
ton
been
of
ideal.
assets.
I think it would have been ideal for him if he could have found a way to get to Boston. But I think he's made 8 straight or 9 straight NBA Finals appearances. I think it's pretty clear that streak is going to come to an end this year. I think if he would have gone to Philadelphia, I think that streak would have continued.
Yeah, and I think if he somehow does, he'll probably win another ring. But I don't see how he does make the finals this year.
Right, because that's the next on our agenda is, LeBron gets all the sports world, really just the world in general, talking about him, and less than 24 hours later, we get the bomb dropped on us that DeMarcus Cousins signs with the Golden State Warriors, which is just, this is straight out of NBA 2K with, the cheat codes turned on and, the override on, like $5.3 million 1-year deal with the Golden State Warriors. Initial thoughts?
It seems like he's chasing a ring. He was an all-star level player. You can't tell me that he's not
25 and 12.
You can't tell me he couldn't get more and a longer contract. So I have to assume his idea is we'll go there, get a ring, maybe he then re-ups again for another 1-2 year contract, or maybe he just goes on and gets another payday after. He's young enough that this isn't his last payday, especially with this 1-year contract. So it's almost unfair. You get Kevin Durant leaves Oklahoma City, which is a perennial Western Conference Finals team. They're right there on the verge of going to the NBA Finals. They made an NBA Finals, and he leaves to go to Golden State, the defending champions at the time.
Well, they had just lost. They blew the 3-1 lead.
That's true. That was the year they
blew
it.
But
they had won the
title.
previous year. They had won a championship. So he goes there.
And they won
better.
73 games. The
Yeah.
team that he joined had just won 73.
They had set the NBA record and then blew the 3-1 lead. So they were arguably the best team in the NBA 2 years in a row. And then you get, a guy coming off of an MVP season. And then they get another all-star to just sign with them for pennies on the dollar. I don't know, just give their GM of the year right now. I know they'll probably give it to someone else, some team that's expected to win 20 games and then wins 45 and makes the playoffs. That's how you get John Hammond getting a GM of the year award. But you can't tell me that Golden State, I don't know, what their GM, are they giving them coke under the table or something? Like, I don't really know. They're like, hey, if you sign here, we'll give you hookers and blow, hookers and blow in Golden State or in San Francisco.
I think, I thought about this a lot, and once the wow factor kind of wore off, because it was stunning when it happened. I got the notification on my phone, which, by the way, if you have Twitter and you want to keep up to date, just turn your notifications on so you can get all the Woj tweets just sent directly to your phone. But anyway, so the tweet comes through, I'm stunned, and then there's like this huge backlash from NBA fans everywhere about fuck the league, fuck the Warriors, fuck DeMarcus Cousins. More and more information starts coming out that apparently there was a 2-year, $40 million contract offer from the Pelicans to re-sign Cousins towards the end of, I believe, at the beginning of the free agency period or either the end of last season. I can't know because I don't know what the dates are when you can negotiate.
Yeah.
But that the Pelicans pulled the offer. Apparently that was the only significant offer he ever got. So before he could even consider that offer, the offer's pulled. And it was reported that no other team made him a significant offer. There was some interest from Boston for a similar type deal that he signed with Golden State. And again, supposedly DeMarcus's people went to the Lakers and tried to get a similar deal that he signed with Golden State, in that 1-year range for their kind of mid-level type money, and they were not interested. So I still don't get people that are mad at DeMarcus Cousins for doing what he did. He went to the best team that wanted him on a deal that he gets to rehab his value. He's coming off an Achilles tear. Let's not forget that. So there's 50-50 shot he's even close to the same player that he was. So to me, it's a no-brainer for him. You're going to the best team in the league. You get to rehab your value there, hopefully, reestablish yourself as a max-type player. And they just so happens their only weakness, if you want to call it that, in the starting lineup is your position. So, again, yes, sure, you want to be mad, you can be mad, but don't be mad at Golden State. They are trying to win. Don't be mad at DeMarcus Cousins. He's trying to do what's best for him. You have to be mad at the NBA in the way that it's set up in general. There's no hard salary cap, and they have max player. So I think if you eliminate a hard cap, if you add a hard cap and you get rid of a maximum salary slot and you say any player can sign for whatever you want, guess what? Super teams are gone. Because these guys aren't, if LeBron's making, $60, $70 million a year, which if they had no maximum player, he could easily get that. There's going to be no space for you to get any of those other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the problem with these super teams arises from the max contract situation in the collective bargaining agreement. And it sounds great from a parity standpoint. We'll do this and then every team can afford a max player or whatever. But then you end up in situations where now every team can afford 2-3 max players. In theory, not every team is obviously signing 2 or 3 max players, but they could. And it allows these super teams, whereas like you said, if LeBron was making $60 million, if Kevin Durant was making 55, if Curry got $50 million a year, these guys would be split up into different teams because someone would offer it. And the number as much, and maybe not LeBron because it seems he wanted to go to LA, but you can't tell me Durant what he's making in Golden State. If the Knicks offered him $55 million a year, he'd probably bolt to New York City in a heartbeat. At some point, the money is enough to talk.
Yeah, these guys, they want to play with each other, but, you're not going to turn down $30, $40 million just because you want to go play with your buddy.
Right, absolutely. And I think that would be the biggest thing, and probably just put a hard cap on there. There's most of the problems right now with these super teams is the CBA and the league's doing. And it'll be interesting to see next time that's up. We'll get the Grand Admiral Dan on here. He's kind of the CBA expert.
Kind of. Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like his Bible.
Yeah, pretty much. He reads a chapter before bed, bedtime stories with Dan.
I could see him talking in his sleep, just throwing out numbers.
He doesn't have any kids, but he'll have kids somewhere down the road, and he'll read them a chapter of the CBA before bed.
They're asleep 30 seconds into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't blame DeMarcus Cousins either, or Golden State. Golden State's got to put the offer out there. And I think it's a great situation for him because he can go in there, he can board, he can bang bodies down low, and he'll get his points.
Oh, yeah, and he can stretch the floor. He can shoot the three. He's going to fit in there. depending on when he gets back, I mean, he's probably not going to be back till December or January, given, he had the Achilles tear pretty late in the season there. But no, like you said, it's you can't really. It's the typical don't hate the player, hate the game, and that this is perfect because it's the game or it's the league that's done this. And I was on Twitter because I love watching people melt down after stuff like this, and I saw a lot of "fuck the NBA, I'm done, I'm never watching again."
Most of those people don't watch that much in the first place.
Well, and here's the thing: if you think like, okay, this is the last straw and the league's going to change this now. Don't hold your breath, because since these super team trends started, the league's ratings have steadily increased. Their revenue is up. And especially when you talk about ratings in comparison to NFL viewership and MLB viewership is down. NBA viewership is up. So unless that changes, they're not going to change anything with the league. If there's no real backlash to this, if people are still going to the games, watching them, there's not going to be any changes.
No, and the NBA, more than the other leagues, also draws an international audience because they have a lot of international players. They're
China
streamed on, NBA has done really well with their digital video streaming in other countries and having TV deals. So you can be in Europe or you can be in China and you can watch the NBA with some ease. It's probably going to cost you money. I don't really know. I've never lived in China or Europe. I've visited Europe, but I just streamed the game illegally.
Shame.
I know. Well, it wasn't on in my hotel last time I was there, and actually I was there during NFL season. I was watching a Packers game in German last time I was over there, which was entertaining because it'd be a bunch of words I don't understand, and all of a sudden you'd hear like linebacker.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I know that word. But yeah, so the NBA has done really good with their international marketing, and some of that's the fact that there are so many players from all over the world. You have a Giannis from Greece. You have, a Yao Ming. You've had superstars from China, from Greece, from Spain, from Australia. You have all these international players, and it's something that the local people can relate to. So I don't think the NBA is going anywhere. If anything, I expect them to increase. The NFL is in trouble with the concussion issue, and players are just retiring early left and right.
Yeah.
And the NFL's still king for now, but
they're not Teflon.
They're on the ropes, and they're definitely fading. So, there are definitely flaws with the NBA. Like we said, max contract, salary cap, a hard salary cap, not we can go into the luxury tax, and we're the Los Angeles Lakers, we're the New York Knicks. We can afford to pay that luxury tax because we get $1 billion from our local TV station to broadcast our games. You fix some of those issues, you could have even better product. But most of those people on Twitter that you were talking about, they don't watch the NBA anyways.
Well,
it's amazing how many times I get some fan, the NBA's rigged or this or that, and I only watch college. It's a better product. And don't get me wrong, I love college basketball. The tournament is one of the most exciting events in all of sports, just because it's 3 weeks of one and done. It doesn't get much better than that for me.
It's all pressure.
But the quality of the NBA playoffs is so much better than the quality of the tournament. The officiating's better in the NBA, despite some of the issues they've had in the past. And the people who say that, just right there, you can immediately ignore their opinion on the NBA because they clearly don't watch it.
Well, and it happened when LeBron went to Miami and when Durant went to Golden State, and even like back when Dwight Howard and Steve Nash went to the Lakers, at the tail end of Nash's career there. It reminds me of like, these people that say they're done or that they'll never watch it again. Like, think about like Nickelback and Creed and how they're like, the like butt end of every joke, the punchline to every joke. Yet those bands sold millions and millions of records. Like, somebody's buying them. Somebody's watching this league despite you being done with it because all the best players are on one team. I think it's going to be freaking entertaining just to see if and how that works. And there's no downside for Golden State there. It's such a small salary. If Boogie, for some reason, is an issue, they can just cut ties and go get some veteran off the scrap heap.
If he never comes, if he's not healthy, the rehab doesn't go well, he never even plays. It's 1 year, $5 million. And yes, to you or me, $5 million, like, that would
set
be
for life. Yeah.
Yeah, huge. But for Golden State, it's nothing.
Drop in the bucket.
That's the revenue they make in a couple home games. They can increase the price of hot dogs by $1 and pay that salary if they had to. I mean, that's obviously not how it works, but they could if they needed to. And it's just it'll be entertaining because I do like watching good basketball. So that's why the NBA playoffs, especially the later rounds, they usually get better. And the Western Conference playoffs are going to be something to really watch next year. I don't know how the Eastern Conference playoffs are gonna play out because.
Well, that's a good segue right there, because this has been a departure. We've been a Bucks only podcast, and now we're a Wisconsin sports podcast. But we'd be remiss if
we just spent like 20 minutes talking about non-Wisconsin sports.
But how could we not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's NBA free agency is in full swing. That's kind of one of the hot topics in all of sports right now.
Yeah. And the Bucks, hey, we're making noise too, baby. It wouldn't be a Bucks off season if we didn't make like that midnight offer to someone. And this year, the great, this year's Tony Snell, this year's Drew Gooden is none other than Turkish Thunder himself, Ersan Ilyasova, the Night Stalker. He's back in Milwaukee, signs a 3-year deal for $21 million, the third year being a team option year. Okay, first of all, yes, it was funny to me, because we make the jokes like same old Bucks, but this is such a Bucks thing to do. Like, we give the guy 3 years, technically 2. It's really 2. I'm assuming that third year won't be picked up, which I don't understand why it was even put in the contract then. But so it's a multi-year deal to a guy that, yes, he's an okay player. Was he really going to have that kind of market for that kind of money? I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Ersan's been a decent role player, but it is just very, very Milwaukee Bucks to do this as if he's this star player you roll the red carpet for. Midnight, Ersan, welcome back.
Yeah, it was one of those things where when I first heard the numbers, I was not happy because it's just, we talked about this the last time we recorded. Every year the Bucks are going to give out a 4 or 5 year deal for $8 million a year, and one of those doesn't kill you. But when you've still got a Dellavedova, you've got a Tony Snell, you've got Teletovic, you've got Henson. You had a Plumlee, but you got rid of him immediately. I mean, that should tell you right there. Now you've got an Ersan Ilyasov, 39-year-old Ersan. Yeah. So they add up, and they really hamstring you. That said, being only 2 years, essentially, made me feel a lot better about it because you do need to fill out your roster. You have to have a minimum number of guys. He does give a little spacing on the floor. He's always been a good rebounder. He's been a pretty serviceable defensive player, and he can give 3-point shooting. He's a bit streaky. He'll have his games where he'll frustrate the hell out of you and go 0 for 7, but then he'll have a game where he goes.
Like he's never been on a court before.
And then the next game he'll come out, he'll go 7 for 8 from 3, and you'll be like, well, why can't we get that guy every single night? So I'm fine with the signing, given that it's essentially only 2 years. I don't see any way that third year is picked up. But
hey, let's not give him
I don't want to tempt
here.
fate. But at the same time, I think you throw the third year in because then his agent can say, hey, it's 3 years, $21 million. Those agents love to pump up those numbers. It looks good for their client. It looks good for everyone. And the Bucks can just sit there and say, yeah, you have your 3 years, $21 million. Ha 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 ha. So yeah, it was one of those things where I'd still probably rather not spend the money, but we've blown money on worse. We've blown more money on worse in the past. So I'm not going to crucify anyone over it. I don't think I would have given that contract out.
Well, and it's also, this is an off season where tons and tons of players, and not just like kind of end of the road role players, but even young guys that, you would think are going to be getting 4-year deals, 3, 4, they're all signing 1-year contracts. So that's kind of what's frustrating to me about the signing, is that it always seems like the Bucks just, for some odd reason, they have to give those extra years, or even just that one extra year. We can't just say, okay, we're going to give you the 1-year deal here. Again, maybe I'm just nitpicking, but that's really the only thing that really frustrated me about the deal. I think Ersan will be fine. I think he's going to be a part of the rotation. And I still think there's more moves to be made as well. Fun fact about Ersan, before we move on to the next topic, this will be his 7th head coach that he's played for just on the Bucs. And this is his 3rd stint. Can you name all 7?
Can I name all 7? Let's see.
So he was drafted in 2005.
So Bud is number 7.
Bud is number 7.
So we have Scott Skiles.
Okay, that's 1. Well, that's 2.
Yeah, Scott Skiles is number 2. We have Larry Krystkowiak.
3.
We have he was here with Jason Kidd, yeah.
Yes. 4.
Stotts.
Yes. 5. Got 2 more.
Porter? Or was
Porter?
That
he was here for
Porter's
Terry
probably his rookie year was probably Porter, maybe. I don't remember when Porter was gone.
No, Terry Porter is not.
Terry Porter.
Ersan was drafted in 2005. Porter was here for 2003 and 2004.
Okay, so Porter was gone, so it was after Terry Porter.
So we got 2 more.
Well, we went from Porter to Krystkowiak. Who else did we have in between there? I'm drawing a blank on who else. We've had. We didn't have the great. Oh, we had 1 year of what's his name who got us the number 1 odds. Number 2 pick was Larry Drew.
Larry Drew. 1 more.
So 1 more. This is tough. You put me out. He did not give me any warning that he was gonna do this. So
Nope.
I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here.
I'll give you a hint. He was an interim coach.
Interim coach. Who got fired mid-season? Scott Skiles got fired mid-season.
Jim Boylan would be the one.
There you go. Yes, Jim Boylan. I was trying to remember which one of his assistants took over.
They all kind of start to run into each other.
Yeah, they do, and he was only here for... Scott Skiles got fired pretty early, didn't he? He was here for a good portion of that season.
Yeah, I want to say at least half or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pull it up on the computer at some point.
Hopefully this will be the last coach that Ersan plays for the Bucs.
I hope so, just because he's 39 or however old. He's another one of those players the Bucs are going to assemble.
Keep in mind, Budenholzer coached him in Atlanta too.
Yes, so it's not a new coach for Ersan. So you have to imagine there was some comfort level there with Budenholzer. You would think he would sign off on this sort of move and think he has a role for him. So yeah, and I got it here. Jim Boylan coached 50 games.
Okay.
Versus Prunty got 37 last year. So yeah, Jason Kidd was fired very early, or Scott Skiles was fired very early in the season, only 32 games in.
Well, and quick aside there, if I remember correctly, Scott Skiles going into that season where he was fired, at the end of the previous season, cleaned out his office, cleaned out his desk, because he wanted to be gone. He wanted the Bucs to fire him. The Bucs said no, and in an awesome move by the Bucs front office there, said, we're going to bring back a guy that just doesn't want to be here on a lame duck status.
It was a very, very weird situation. One of many as a Bucs fan. You just kind of
you forget about these things, and then they all come back when you bring back a guy like Ersan. But the other big Bucs free agent news, or really I guess lack thereof as far as the news is concerned, is Jabari Parker, the kind of elephant in the room here. Will he be back? Won't he be back? He's still out there on the market as a restricted free agent. There's been a lot of movement as far as other restricted free agents signing. Julius Randle, the Lakers renounced his rights, so he goes over to the New Orleans Pelicans. He signs a 2-year, $18 million contract. Aaron Gordon, same draft class, re-signs with John Hammond and the Orlando Magic for 4 years and $84 million. Pretty significant number there. It doesn't surprise me that it's John Hammond giving the overpay and that there was no actual offer made to Aaron Gordon. That's right in John's wheelhouse there. Other restricted free agents, Dante Exum, same draft class, 3-year, $33 million deal. Kind of a similar situation, given that he has
struggled
the
with the injuries. Yeah.
So maybe that's like a barometer of the the
Yeah,
ballpark that you would see a Jabari deal come in at. But we talked before the offseason started or the free agency period started that there were some teams with cap space and that all it takes is one to kind of make that offer. But now all these places are drying up as far as who has significant money. All that's really left now is Atlanta, Sacramento, who apparently were early in on Jabari but now are out, which doesn't surprise me given that they drafted Bagley and they have a lot of front court depth there as far as young guys, and the Chicago Bulls. That was the kind of when you talked about Jabari, pretty much in the entire last year, that's the team that everybody would come back to and say, well, he's the hometown guy. They're young, they're rebuilding, they could take a shot, but as of now, nothing. So, what do you think is going to happen here? I mean,
given our past history, I would assume we're going to bid against ourselves and give Jabari something like 3 years, $36 million, based on other contracts that have been given out and our past tendencies. That said, if I was Chicago, and we talked about this before we started recording, is that if I was Chicago, I probably would take the flyer and I'd probably go a little high because they're rebuilding. Doesn't really matter how it works out. They're a big market team. They've got the money. None of that really matters. Either you get the player, it fails, it succeeds, whatever, doesn't matter. Again, you're rebuilding. Or you get a division rival to blow more money than they should, matching the offer. Just kind of a head game type thing. Now, will they do that? I don't know. It's a risk to take. It's one of those things where if you oversign a player who's a restricted free agent, either the other team matches it and you screw them with a big contract, or you get it and you're saddled with that contract. I think of all the teams that are left, it only really makes sense either staying here in Milwaukee or going to Chicago. It's kind of surprising, not so much that he hasn't signed at all, but that we haven't really heard anything. There's been not really much chatter whatsoever. And we're a week into free agency? I don't think we're quite a week. I don't remember when exactly it started.
It doesn't sound like we're that far in, but when you talk about the scope of when these deals tend to happen, we are pretty significantly into as far as the big
usually
name, the big
usually
money.
all at this point you get the 40-year-old Jason Terry, is going to sign a 1-year deal with someone, or whatever veterans are still out there. They'll come later in the free agency period, maybe not even until training camp or even into the season begins for some of them. They don't need the practice. Some of them just come into mid-season, help out a team that's running for the playoffs. So, for a player that's young and has potential still, and as much as I don't really want the Bucks to keep Jabari, he does still have potential. He could turn it around. It's unlikely with 2 ACL injuries. It's strange that not only has he not gotten any offer, but it doesn't even seem there's not even smoke. It's not even one of those things. Well, there's just nothing.
So far,
and I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I go back and forth on Jabari because, injuries aside, we have not seen any significant stretch from him where he is meshing with Giannis, where the impact goes beyond the statistics. I mean, I've never had a stretch of games from Jabari where I'm going, okay, he's putting it together. He's, not just from putting up points, but taking over a game, really making it feel like the team you're playing against has to game plan against him.
Once or twice in his career, he drops a big game, and you're like, oh, wow.
On top of that, you look at the way this past season ended in that, by all accounts, Jabari quit on the team. I don't care what anybody says. You can say whose fault it is. It's Kidd's fault. It's the Bucks' fault. At the end of the season, he quit on that team. And this is a guy that had everything to lose, being that it was a contract year for him, and he shut it down. He's a little bit different personality-wise. And when you talk about committing not just money to that guy, but saying, you're a huge part of this franchise, I look at the risks involved, and there's a ton with that knee. If he blows the ACL again, it's done. It's over. But to me, the bigger risk is what kind of guy this is emotionally, what his mental state is. Can he handle being, a top guy, being the the Robin to Jabari's bat or to Giannis's Batman. That's the bigger concern in my eyes. I can't see with a young person with everything in the world to lose making that decision to basically, again, like I said, for lack of a better term, quit on his teammates. On the other hand, the market is getting to the point now where it's a buyer's market. And if you can get Jabari on a similar level of like a Dante Exum, maybe you do bring him back and he can be a premium sixth man, which I always thought was his best role for a team. But again, I'm kind of 50-50 on that proposition. My biggest thing for the Bucks is what I want to see them do is, as of right now, the only significant players they have after the next, not this next offseason, but the one after that on the books is Tony Snell and Giannis. If they can somehow clear Tony Snell and keep all the rest of their money coming off the books in 2 seasons' time, that's 2 more years that Golden State is probably getting towards the end of it. LeBron will be, I think, 36 or 37 at that time.
With a ton of miles on him. I mean, he's already got a ton of miles.
The bottom could drop out of that at any point in time. Now you have Giannis, who's entering his prime. You have all the cap space in the world and hopefully some young assets. So, Chris Middleton is in the final year of his deal. Bledsoe's in the final year of his deal. I'm not opposed to moving those guys because you have a long-term plan. Will the Bucks do that? Probably not. I don't think that they have enough vision. I don't think they'll look into the future that way.
We'll probably sign Jabari to a 3-year, $30 to $36 million contract, and that'll be our next, $8 to $12 million a year contract that we're saddled with to go. It pairs nicely with a Snell and a Dellavedova and a Toledovich, and we could rehash this all
Kinda
again.
What we do.
So it'd be nice if we had a long-term plan like that. Giannis is saying all the right things. He wants to stay here. He'd never leave to go to Los Angeles.
Yeah, and fuck you, Colin Cowherd, for trying to goad him into saying something stupid.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. If there comes a point where the Bucks just can't put a team around Giannis and he leaves to go somewhere else for a championship, I'll be heartbroken, but I won't blame him.
Yeah.
I get it. I've been a Bucks fan my entire life. I've watched this for 30 years. I know exactly what we're going to be doing. And, outside of 2001 in my lifetime, we've been terrible. And even then, we went and screwed the whole damn thing up very quickly. We kind of lucked into that situation more than anything. It's it'll be interesting to see what happens both this year with Jabari and then potentially 2 years from now is kind of that year where we could have a bunch of cap space. Can Giannis improve his shoe? I mean, he's already a superstar where he's at right now. He's an all-star player. Barring injury, he'll be in the all-star game every year for the next decade. Can he improve a little bit on that shot? Can he convince someone else to come here in free agency? Or can we package some assets and get a top 5 pick to get another player? Those are the big questions the next couple of years.
Yeah,
and with the Eastern Conference being what it is, it feels like it's not going to take as much to get to the NBA Finals because the Western Conference absolutely loaded, but the path to the Finals in the East, you got to get past Boston and Philadelphia, and you may only have to play one on the way to the Finals. I think those are clearly right now the top 2 teams. And then after that, it's just a hodgepodge mess of teams. And Milwaukee, they took Boston to 7 games, and they had some injuries and whatnot. But, we can compete with Boston. We can compete with Philadelphia right now as we are, especially potentially if we have better coaching, because our coaching last year was bottom of the league.
No argument here.
So I don't think we're super far off from necessarily even being a legitimate contender for the Eastern Conference Finals and potentially NBA Finals. And but I think we get completely destroyed by whoever would come out of the Western Conference unless they beat each other so much in the playoffs that you came into those finals with someone injured or
3-4 guys
limping
injured.
Exactly, a couple guys with a sore hammy and they're just not at full strength or full speed. But I say this every offseason myself. I don't know where we get the talent to put us over the edge to be a legit contender because it's not coming in the draft. it's hard to imagine, a Kawhi coming here in free agency, or a Paul George when his contract's up, or whoever, those Golden State guys. Eventually, one of them's going to have to, they're not going to keep re-signing there every offseason. So eventually, someone's going to leave, or I don't know. It's both frustrating and exciting, the future possibilities, because I fully expect us to blow it. But with the right moves, we are setting ourselves up to potentially do something special.
Well, I want to move on and talk some Brewers, but before we do, I just want to know, just go on the record now, what do you think is going to happen with Jabari? There's still the possibility of a sign and trade. There's a possibility that he takes the qualifying offer and goes on a 1-year deal to try to prove himself, and then he's unrestricted next year. I can't even go on the record because it's just so – there's nothing so far, no indications. My only gut tells me is that given the way that last year transpired, I don't think the Bucks want Jabari back, and I don't think Jabari wants to be back on the Bucks. Right now, the Bucks are just protecting an asset that they have, so we'll see what happens.
It is strange that we haven't heard basically anything based on the way the way Dante Exum and Bucks past history. My gut would normally tell me 3 years, $30 to $36 million, stay with the Bucks. But I do get that feeling that maybe, whether it's management, whether it's the owners, whether it's new coach, that maybe they're realizing it's not a great fit, which it hasn't really been from the beginning. So maybe they are ready to move on, and they're going to try to do a sign and trade, or just see what someone else offers him, because I don't think you can let him walk for free if you can at all avoid it. Now, if someone way overpays him, you got to cut your losses. But I think ideally they'd want to sign and trade, or to get him back on a short, qualifying offer, or whatever the situation is. So yeah, I normally I'd be a 3-year, $30 to $36 million deal from the Bucks, just because that's what we do. But it is a strange situation. But there's one other NBA thing we have to talk about before we move on, and that's Giannis is on the 2K cover.
Oh yes,
that's for anyone out there who also plays video games. It's freaking huge.
First international player to ever be on the cover.
First Buck, or did we?
Ray Allen was on the cover.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I don't know
something.
what game. Something I remember.
Yeah.
I had the game. It sucked ass.
Yeah.
I think.
But it's huge because 2K is the NBA game.
That's the Madden.
Well, and the only reason Madden is Madden of football is because EA paid the NFL $1 billion or whatever they paid them. 2K football was way better than Madden football back in 2005, the last year you could have a competitor. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about that. I don't even really buy the 2K basketball games every year.
I'll be buying this year's.
Play them here and there, but I probably will pick it up this year. I've got an Xbox. I know you've got a PS4.
Maybe they'll actually make Giannis's player animation look like him this year now that he's on the cover.
You would have to imagine. You'd have to imagine they're going to give him better treatment than they have in years past.
Like he always looks like a troll. Like they always make his upper body too big. But like his arms are super long, so he looks like almost like a caveman. Like they're just dragging, and it's weird. It never looks right.
Yeah, I was pretty excited, pretty happy for him. He seems such a genuinely good kid, and it seemed like he was not surprised, but he was happy and excited to be on that cover. I think it's a big deal for him.
Oh yeah, and the promo they did for it, they had his mom doing the voiceover, telling stories about him. Like it gives you chills.
That whole family is awesome. It's too sad about his dad. So hopefully, that's kind of a tribute to his dad too, probably, I'd imagine, in his vision.
Well, I put out a tweet on the Buck Life Twitter account. I said that Giannis is the antithesis of Batman in The Dark Knight. He's the hero Milwaukee needs but doesn't deserve, whereas Batman was the hero Gotham needs but didn't like, or the Gotham deserved but didn't need at that point.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
the opposite for us. We don't deserve him, but we need him.
Yeah.
But okay, Brewers talk. Let's get to it, man. Rough month of June for the Brewers. They were one game under 500, but it didn't feel that way. And I don't know if it was because of tempered expectations. We had a lot of injuries that we were dealing with, and they stayed in first place the entire month. They haven't relinquished that. So it off to a good start here in July. Today's the 4th of July that we're recording this. They just swept Minnesota earlier this afternoon, going into a big four-game series with Atlanta.
Four-game series with Atlanta, yeah.
So you could argue this is the biggest series of the year coming up. But again, they keep rolling, man. Or I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say rolling, because if you go under 500 in a month, you're not rolling. But they just keep sticking with the punches, I guess, or whatever cliche you want to throw out there.
Yeah, you roll with the punches or whatever. It's one of those things where, they're not playing the best, but especially in this Twin series, they just found a way to win all 3 games. The first game, they were up 1-0, then it was tied 1-1. They give up a grand slam, and then they just fought back and ended up winning 6-5. And then Game 3 was a pitcher's duel. Eric Thames hits a 2-run homer, and that's all the offense they needed. And then today was another pitcher's duel with winning 3-2. So they do keep fighting. They seem to have that special chemistry. We kind of saw that the year with Tony Plush and Braun and Fielder. There were a couple of years there where the team just seemed to have fun day in and day out. When they were doing the untuck 'em, the beast mode. They've had these years throughout there, and they seem to be having another year like that where they'll exceed expectations. And I agree, going a game under 500 isn't ideal, but like you said, they kept first place. They're a game up on the Cubs, who are unfortunately playing much better than they were early in the season. But they keep winning enough, and they've been so injured that it's one of those things where if we can get everyone healthy at the same time, there's no reason to think they shouldn't at least get the wild card.
Well, and this team, you mentioned those the division winner, the wild card team. This definitely has that special kind of feeling to the year. Look at today, for instance. In the game, Nate Orff, who is a career minor leaguer, he was undrafted out of high school. He spent, I think, 9 years in the minor leagues. He gets called up this week. His first major league hit is a home run that ended up being the game-winning home run. And, I get goosebumps thinking about it, that here's this unassuming, he's like the real-life Crash Davis from Bull Durham, and the crowd is going crazy for him. They want the curtain call. He doesn't want to do it. He's being modest. And Aguilar and VR put him on his shoulders. Like I said, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. There's just this different kind of feeling with this team that even last year, they were supposed to be nothing last year, and they ended up being a game out of the playoffs. While that was a fun year, it didn't feel like this does to me. You said it. They've dealt with injuries. They haven't been healthy all season yet. As of right now, they're 16 games over 500.
Best record in the NL.
In the National League.
Yeah.
With a bunch of, a pitching staff that if you asked an average MLB fan, they're not going to know a single one of these guys. So despite all these things working against them, they just keep winning. They just keep staying where they are. I'm really hoping the bottom doesn't fall out on this team, because it would be really heartbreaking. Another guy I'd be remiss if I didn't mention would be Keon Broxton. Here's another story of last year. He was 20-20 by all means, and a great defensive player. Struggled with the strikeout, struggled in spring training, didn't make the team, was very, very upset. Had every reason to just mail it in, demand a trade, whatever you want to do. He's been at AAA. Again, the Brewers deal with all these injuries. They call him up. He's just been on fire since he got called up. He's hitting home runs. He's stolen, 3 home runs he's robbed at the wall in the 9th inning of games, of one-run games since he's been up in these last couple weeks, which is pretty damn crazy. It's just sometimes in baseball you need to have these little things that go your way, and the Brewers just keep going with it. Can they hold back the juggernaut that is the Cubs? Remains to be seen, but man, I hope they can.
Yeah, their payroll's $300 million or some stupid number over in Chicago. But nice. There was that game last week. Keon Broxton single-handedly won, both offensively and defensively. He hit 2 home runs, robbed a home run. I think it was against the Reds. All the games, baseball games go so quick when you play 5-6 games a week. They kind of start to blur together. But he had that game. He single-handedly won. Even today, he pulled a home run back in the 9th inning.
It was sick.
He Corey Knebel owes him a beer tonight. He better have taken him out for a nice steak and a beer because
he was pumped too. They showed Knebel on the replay, watching it as it happened.
Yeah,
he was excited.
Right, and he pulled it right back, and in a game, if he didn't save that run, it would have been 3-3. We go extra innings. Who knows what happens, because Hader pitched 3 innings yesterday, so he's probably not available today.
Jeffers pitched today.
Jeffers had already pitched, so you're going to get to not the great players in your bullpen, because with those 3 have been, for the most part, lights out. I know Knebel's had his struggles, but he's still a good reliever. And Hader's obviously been great. Jeffers has been great. But after those 3, there's a whole bunch of arms in the bullpen that I just don't trust at all. So we had to win that in the 9th inning, especially at home. You have to win it right there. And we did because of Keon Broxton. And I told you before, and he reminds me a bit of Tony Plush. He has that kind of, dynamic lightning personality. It looks like he's having fun out there. You see when he pulls those balls back, he was so pumped up out there in the outfield. Which you don't often. A lot of times baseball players don't play with a ton of emotion, which I get. It's a 162 game season. You can't get too high. You can't get too low. You're going to have your struggles.
Man.
Every player is going to make an error at some point. They're going to boot a ball that costs the team a game. It's going to happen. But he's out there looking like he's having a great time and fired up, and he's absolutely earning some playing time.
Yeah, I hope they can keep him on the field.
Yeah, it's one of those things where once everyone's healthy, I'd rather keep him in center field and move Kane to left field and have Braun be a pinch hitter, play 2-3 games a week, just give people
It's
a day
sad
off,
watching him
whatever.
play.
Braun is a shell of himself.
Yeah,
he's not what he was. Whether it's nagging injuries, whether it's a lack of the roids, and those are probably helping deal with injuries more than anything else. It's not like he was ever like 300 pounds, he wasn't ever built super big. I'm sure it's just for injury reasons. So yeah, it's just, I hope they can manage this, because there's only so many innings and positions to play, but I think he's earning his playing time out there.
Yeah. Braun, going back to him real quick, I know he still has some fans here in Milwaukee, but, I've argued with some of Braun's fans, and I tell him, he's a boat anchor at this point. He does nothing for the team. And he's still clutch, and, his salary, it goes down the next few years. And I'm like, okay, if you're worthless at $20 million, you're still worthless at $16 million or $15 million too. So, it's just a shame that they have all this depth in the outfield, because I don't think Counsell is going to bench Braun. I mean, he played with Braun, and obviously he's the highest paid player on the team, so maybe there's some pressure from ownership that, I don't care how badly he's struggling, we're not going to pay him $20 million to sit on the bench. And as you said, I think in the short time that Broxton's been up here, he's earned playing time, not just for what he's done on the field, but I think his clubhouse, that what he does in the clubhouse, the personality, hugely important too, especially as you said, with a 162 game grind, you need someone to keep the juices flowing. Coming up on the All-Star break here, we talk about who could be the Brewers All-Star representative or representatives. Hader was kind of the early favorite. I mean, he's still pitching great, but he's dropped out a little bit from the, crazy dominance that he showed early on in the season. Jeffers is having an even better year than Hader. It'd be interesting to see 2 middle relievers get named to the All-Star team. You don't see that often. It's usually the closers and the starters. But to me, if he doesn't make the All-Star team, it's going to be a complete sham, and that's Jesus Aguilar, more so than just, is he an All-Star this year? You can argue he's putting up MVP-level numbers. I mean, at this point in the season, we're a little bit past halfway. He's got 19 home runs, 55 RBIs. He's hitting .308 with a .371 on-base percentage, and his on-base plus slugging is .987. I mean, that's sick. That is MVP-level numbers.
Yeah, and I thought he was – I'm not sure if he's still – I know he was tied. Last time he hit a home run, he was tied for the lead, I believe, in the National League. I'll have to pull that up and see. But I definitely think he's worthy. I think Hader, Jeffers, I think those are probably the 3 guys that are certainly deserving of getting those things. Plus, Aguilar is not just he's been good all year. Obviously anything over a 300 batting average is fantastic. The 19 home runs are great, the 15 RBIs, all that. But he's had so many clutch hits where it's, a walk-off home run
Always
or
2 strikes.
or a seventh inning big hit. These late game big hits, and it doesn't matter. A run in the first inning is the same as a run in the ninth inning. I think sometimes the idea of clutchness gets overblown by fans. But at the same time, you can't argue with the magnitude of the situation of when he's hit some of those things. So yeah, that's.
Well, you talk about the specialness of this year. Here's another story. I mean, this is a guy that he was 50-50 to make the roster. I mean, as a pinch hitter, backup first baseman. Early in the year, he wasn't really playing more so than just a bench type role. Eric Thames gets hurt, and Aguilar gets off to the hot start. Now you're talking about a guy who was, maybe a bad game or two in spring training away from not making the MLB roster to an MVP candidate. And you just don't see stuff like that. That's what, again, when you talk about the specialness of this team, that's the kind of thing that really jumps out at you. And if he continues this level and the Brewers, say, end up with the best record in the National League, how is he not the MVP? I mean, you take the best player from the best team, if that's your criteria for MVP, and the numbers back it up too with the home runs, the RBIs, the on-base percentage, the slugging. It would be pretty awesome to me to see, that kind of story. And again, another tweet I put out today after the game is that I'm not the biggest baseball guy, but when I see something like Nate Orff getting his first big league hit and it's a game-winning home run, and the curtain call, baseball provides moments that you don't see in other sports, just those epic moments that give you the goosebumps and stuff you don't forget. And that's kind of what I'll always give the sport itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, Aguilar, he wasn't even a full-time player early in the season because, like you said, he almost didn't make the roster. So I pulled up the stats, and he's got 19 home runs, and the leader's 22. But he's got almost 100 less at-bats. And he's hit almost as many home runs. So, he's having one hell of a season, and it'll be interesting to see. I haven't really followed because I know they do the fan voting and all that, and I don't have the time to vote and all that stuff, so I don't know who's where in those standings.
Brewers aren't going to get any.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get any fan voting this year. It's funny when they had Braun and Fielder. They used to get Corey Hart would be leading the fan voting, and Braun and Fielder and all them, and we're not there now. But we used to turn out the vote pretty well in those. One other thing I wanted to touch on, because I was looking at the schedule here. We have this 4-game series with the Braves. We have a weird scheduling quirk. We actually close into the All-Star game with a 5-game series at the Pirates because we have a doubleheader for that rain makeup from a couple weeks ago. So we'll be in the next
days off.
Yeah, no days off, and in the next what is that? The next 11 days leading up to the All-Star game, 12 games in 11 days. And then we get the All-Star game. So that'll be a well-deserved break for anyone who gets it off. And even the guys that go to the All-Star game.
Then maybe it'll be a good thing if the Brewers don't get more than one guy in the All-Star game.
Yeah, they could certainly use it. But even still, going to the All-Star game is like a vacation anyways. They don't really have to work all that hard. You play a couple innings. If you're a pitcher, you pitch 1 inning.
Yeah.
If you're a position player, you play 3-4 innings, and maybe if Aguilar makes it, maybe they invite him to do the home run derby or something, and as long as he doesn't screw up his swing, go for it.
Well, praise Jesus. Keep it up, brother. Before we go, I want to get a little bit Packers talk here. It just broke, I think, either yesterday or the day before that Aaron Jones, a running back, was suspended for the first 2 games of the season for substance abuse policy. It then came out that it was a marijuana-related incident from last year. And I just want to kind of go on the record that this shit is just getting ridiculous with the marijuana stuff in the NFL. It's pathetic. It's two-faced. It's hypocritical of the league. You have guys that are going out there, risking their lives, getting hurt, getting concussed, and then getting doped up. Getting injections, getting addicted to painkillers. and you're going to have a non-addictive substance like marijuana on your banned list, as you said, I don't know how many states have it legal recreationally at this point. It's going to be coming. I think it's a sham. I think it's bullshit that a guy can't self-medicate with something that's far, far less harmful to them than, say, a Vicodin or the bullshit that they can get prescribed by any of the team doctors just by saying, "Oh, my leg hurts." So, I feel bad for Aaron. I feel bad that he had to release a bullshit statement apologizing for his actions. He shouldn't have to apologize, and that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's 8 states plus DC have legalized it recreationally, and I've personally never touched marijuana, and I have no reason that at this point in my life I would, but I fully support legalizing it. It should be as legal as going into the store and getting alcohol or cigarettes, whatever, whether you want to say 18, 21. I personally think either once you're an adult at 18, you should be able to do whatever you want. I think it's ridiculous we have an age of 21. Not to get too far off track here since we're a sports podcast, but
I know we could go on this too.
Yeah. So once you're an adult, you're an adult. Do what you want. And the NBA kind of does this right in that, they kind of, when you're going to get tested for marijuana, you can smoke it in the off season. And as long as you don't pull a Larry Sanders and just smoke it nonstop.
What do you have, 13 violations?
Yeah. They don't do anything. Like the first 5 violations, they just say, hey, knock it off. And then they start fining you and you eventually get suspended. But you have to literally smoke marijuana like a dozen times before the NBA gives you a 5-game suspension.
Yeah.
So Aaron Jones gets 2 games. And to me, the most absurd thing, and I mentioned this before we started recording, is Jameis Winston gets 3 games. He literally grabbed a woman by the pussy. Like, he pulled a Donald Trump, grabbed an Uber driver by the pussy. He gets a 3-game suspension for literal assault.
Sexual assault.
Literal assault. Meanwhile, Aaron Jones, a victimless crime, if you want to call it a crime, and he gets a 2-game suspension. There was, he didn't hurt anyone. And it's just... It's absolutely infuriating. The NFL, the legislators, all these, they just need to get over themselves. He's hurting no one. Not even himself, not his teammates, nothing. No one was harmed by Aaron Jones having marijuana by smoking it. Could you imagine if he
smoked marijuana and then knelt on the field during the national anthem? Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, if you smoke marijuana, you'd be mellowed out. You'd probably forget to kneel. You'd be sitting over on the bench, just kind of gathering your thoughts or whatever. So it's so infuriating to me. Not just for Aaron Jones, and thankfully he's an NFL player. All he got was a 2-game suspension. Probably got a small fine from the state for that or whatever. But we have so many people locked in jail over this nonsense. The entire thing is a failure. Not to get too far off of sports, but it's something I'm personally very passionate about, and it makes it a bigger joke that Jameis Winston probably assaulted someone at Florida State, got off because the investigators and the police wanted them to get their national championship, probably assaulted this Uber driver, and again, he's going to get a slap on a wrist, 3-game suspension. Like, we coddle these guys who are legitimately beating their girlfriends, well, Ray Rice kind of got blacklisted at least, that was one they kind of got right, but we're coddling these guys who are legitimately wife beaters and sexual assaulters and this and that, and we're enabling them because if you don't punish them, they're going to get the message that they can get away with this. And meanwhile, you have a guy who, whether he smoked marijuana because he wanted to get a high or if he, took a little pain off, whatever his reasons, I don't give a shit. That's not hurting anyone. It's absurd. And this older generation, the owners of the NFL, the politicians, they need to wake the fuck up and knock it off because it's just not cool.
Well, and, from a on-the-field standpoint, it's kind of a bummer, too, because I really, really enjoyed what I saw out of Aaron Jones last year. Every year, Mike McCarthy gets up on the podium and says, we're going to run the football more this year, and it's bullshit. But this year, it actually felt like maybe they had the horses to do it. Again, 2 games, yes, but Aaron Jones was their most explosive runner last year. I mean, they
He
had
was
the two
he was
good
the
rookies,
best running back we had in a while.
for sure. And the two good rookies with him and Williams. Why can't I remember his first name?
Well, and Williams didn't come on until later in the season. He really looked kind of like he might have been a bust early on in the season. So it was one of those things where I was all in on Aaron Jones because he looked right from the start. He looked like he was going to be a legit stud, and it's Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams, yes.
But then midway, 8-9 games into the season, Aaron Jones had a game where he was injured, and then all of a sudden Jamal Williams went off for 100 yards. And he not only, it wasn't just good blocking from the line, he was breaking some tackles, he was making some good cuts himself, and maybe he just needed a little time to get used to the playbook and whatever. I was really excited going into this season, and we'll get Aaron Jones back in week 3, but those first 2 games are against division opponents, so that really hurts.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying all this because I'm a Packers fan and I'm biased for Aaron Jones. Any player in the league who gets suspended for smoking or possessing marijuana, it's bullshit, especially when they're going so light on legitimate people who are, assaulting other people.
Sure. And, you look at the Packers runners last year, they ended up getting 1,300 yards from all their running backs, that being Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones, and Ty Montgomery, and 11 rushing touchdowns. Again, that's not anything to scoff at. So
no, it's a respectable running game, and when you have Aaron Rodgers, if you have a running game to keep them honest, keep the defense honest, they can't just stack the box, pin their ears back, and chase down Aaron Rodgers.
Well, it seems like they had a good mix too. I mean, I think, as I said, Jones is definitely the fastest, most explosive runner. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry last year. Jamal Williams, significantly less yards per carry, but he was more of a scat back. He was more of a receiving threat. I think he ended up with almost 30 catches, or somewhere in that ballpark, between 20 and 30 receptions. And then you got Ty Montgomery, who, coming into the year was supposed to be the starter. But he's still a versatile player that you can line up as a slot receiver. You can line him up in the backfield, obviously. So they're going to have some options as far as running goes. It's just, like I said, it's kind of a bummer. Your first 2 games, you lose your most explosive runner. Maybe that just kind of gives McCarthy he goes into old habits. It's just like, well, forget running the ball. When you lose your best runner, it's easy to just regress into, throw the ball 8 times out of 10.
Yeah, I just pulled up the stats here. Jamal Williams had 25 catches for 262 yards, 10.5 yards average, but he had 818 total yards from scrimmage, which for a rookie, when you're splitting time with 2 other running backs, that's a very respectable numbers there. And he only started 7 out of those 16 games because he wasn't the starter until later in the year when Jones and Montgomery were both kind of a little beat up. So, and Ripkowski's a fine fullback too. I mean, it's kind of not a glorified position, but we didn't lose a beat going from Kuhn to Ripkowski. You have solid
kind of
run.
A forgotten position. Not many teams carry the fullback anymore.
It's one of those things where when you have a player like Aaron Rodgers, you got to keep him upright, and if you get a good fullback who can both block and hit the hole. And there were plenty of times where I saw Ripkowski getting up there and blowing up a linebacker, just springing the running back. If the running back can get into the secondary without getting touched, that's doing pretty good. And thankfully, with our combinations of running back last year, we didn't have to hand it off to Ripkowski too much. It was just for the most part, the running backs taking care of business, because we know how McCarthy loves that fullback dive.
Don't give him any ideas.
I know. Let's see, what did he have last year? He only had 5 rushes last year for 13 yards. I mean, that's fantastic. Whereas he had 34 the year before. So that's I'm pretty furious about it, and not just because it's a Packers player. It's just the world is changing. Marijuana is going to be legal in all 50 states within probably a decade. There might be a few holdouts here and there, but the tide's turning. The league needs to get on board. It's just going to be another reason they're going to lose followers and viewers. They're worried about this kneeling for the flag stuff, and yeah, there's some people who care about that, but that's not why they're losing followers. It's the product on the field. and the injuries and all the other bullshit, the inconsistent suspensions and whatnot. So that's my feelings on it anyways.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's just going to about do it for the podcast formerly known as Buck Life. Maybe by the time this hits the airwaves, we'll have a name for it. I don't know. We'll see. Fingers crossed on that. Chuck, you got anything to add?
No, but I'm going to probably have to pull up some sort of Prince song for the intro music
artist
this
formerly
week.
known as?
Yeah, the artist formerly known as Prince.
I
got
vote Darling Nikki.
Yeah, I got no real thoughts other than, again, I said this last time, but it's a great time to be a Wisconsin sports fan. We got a lot of good teams going on right now, and we probably, if we try to record every week or so, it'll probably be close to the All-Star break next time. It will be the All-Star break. No, it won't. The All-Star break's not until the 17th. I was thinking the All-Star break was earlier. But maybe we'll have some resolution on Jabari, and that'll hopefully nothing too crazy from the Bucks. I don't want a max contract or anything dumb.
Well, we'll see. Knock on wood. All right. Well, once again, we'd like to thank you all for listening. Keep listening. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to us on wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Twitter. For now, it's @Buck Life Podcast. If there's any changes to that, we'll let you know. Thanks a lot.